Any other comments? Yes, Jamie.
Jamie Rowe, 4215 Hazel Pine. 100% of pre-planting, taking the wood off, chipping the stumps, and also stopping the removal of all small diameter trees. These are all very important things, and I realize that last one was not a recommendation by the entire board, but it lost by a slim margin. These issues were mentioned over and over by the public in emails and in person at the panel meetings, and it shows what the public was thinking about and what they thought was important. In the response to panel recommendations, the words of the panel are paraphrased and rewritten. I don't understand why that happened. Why did the panel spend all those hours and expend all that effort writing the rationales and other information for KUB to completely redo them? Most people won't see that final report with the panel's words. They'll read the response from KUB, and that's unfortunate because we were very careful and we spent a lot of time agonizing over the right word to use, words that we felt were important to relate exactly what our thoughts were and the thoughts that had been conveyed to us in emails and in person by people that sat through many hours of meetings in order to address the panel. Your literature states that the property will be left in the same condition it was found. Leaving a mound of wood and a stump for people who probably can't afford to have them removed is certainly not what people would expect. The people that are savvy enough to negotiate with KUB do get them removed. We found that out from several people on the panel, from several people that were in the audience that came forward. Those who aren't savvy enough are stuck with the wood and its removal. It reminds me of the book 1984, and I said this at the meeting. We're all equal, but some of us are more equal than others. Some people will want their wood, and why not give the rest of the wood away and use it as a write-off, or else make arrangements with a few companies that sell firewood and make money to help offset the cost of chipping the stumps. Contract with a company or two that only chip stumps. With the economy the way it is, you could probably negotiate a really good deal with them. I was also stunned that KUB left out my individual minority report from the response to the panel recommendations. Important information was included there that most people will probably never see. My report was a little over 1 page long. No, I didn't have any recommendations. It shouldn't have been omitted. I do not believe KUB had the authority to remove any minority report, no matter what it said. That's exactly the point of a minority report. It's a difference of opinion. I thought this information should be a part of the report. Some others on the panel disagreed. That's why I made a minority report. I would think KUB, the public, and particularly the 75 nominees, would want to know how many meetings were not attended by panel members, how many hours were not spent there, and also the number of emails and calls that were received and how many of those were complaints of KUB. KUB enclosed a notice to all their customers with their March and April utility bills, and it said, and I have 2 of them in my possession, the panel was chosen from 75 members, from 75 nominees. That just wasn't true, as I found out several months later. Several of us were chosen, as I was. I didn't have a passion for tree trimming policies, but there were 75 people that did. People that were either nominated by someone or took the time to fill out an application for themselves in the hope they would be chosen so they could express their views. I felt like there was a lot of responsibility on my shoulders because I wasn't chosen. I was chosen and I wasn't nominated. So I dove into it and I spent as much time as I possibly could reading every bit of material and trying to express views that I thought express views of people that we heard from. If more diversity was needed on this board, as I was told when I brought this up in the meetings, then why not advertise for more people to apply and choose other people? Or choose people and make it clear to your customers that everyone on the panel was not 75 nominees. Why is that important, and why is it important to me? Because I feel like I was a part of something that wasn't true, and I really don't like that. I feel like my name was used, that I was a nominee. People called me, asked me who nominated me. I told them I had no idea, that I didn't nominate myself and I didn't know. And then months later I found out that that was not the case, that there were some of us that were chosen. There are two reasons this is really important. People with a real passion for that issue will attend meetings and they'll study the issues, and others may not. One of the chosen people missed 1/2 of the meetings. Another chosen one missed 1/4 of the meetings. What do you think the people that filled out applications or were nominated by others for their passion and interest in this issue would think? I hope you understand why this is so important. It's because it goes to the heart of the problem that we're trying to solve. The issue we're discussing, tree trimming, it has to do with two things: respect for customers and truthfulness to customers, which really are at the heart of every recommendation that was made. I told this board once before that growing up I heard many KUB stories, and most of them were glowing compliments. I long for that day again, and I hope as a member of the board that you will feel that way too.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question? Bill, would you know the number of trees that we cut down? How many of those customers are we providing benefit to, as opposed to a positive instead of a negative? Is there any way to tell? I mean, if somebody
we can pull those numbers together for you. I think the important thing to remember is we do not remove any tree from private property, residential areas and maintain lawns. We don't remove any tree without the customer's permission. And with that permission, there is a written agreement between us and the customer as to what will be done with the wood and or the stump. So the customer will not be forced into something against their will. I mean, they might rather us ground the stump, they might rather us remove the wood. But in reality, there is an agreement before the work is done as to what will be done and what will remain behind. In many cases, in some cases, the tree is coming down, or that discussion with the customer is initiated by us because we feel like the tree is a threat to our lines. We would much rather remove it than prune it. In some cases, it's the customer who initiates that discussion. I've been contacted a couple of times in the last week by individuals saying, there is a tree, it needs to come down, it's near your lines, can you all participate in that? Will you either make it safe, will you remove it? So in many cases, there is a benefit derived by the customer, in some respects equal to KUBs or greater than KUBs for our participation in the removal of that tree. But in terms of numbers, I don't think we've got a breakdown today that would tell you this percentage was predominantly because we wanted it down, this percentage was by virtue of the customer's needs. I mean, we could try to pull that together, but I do not have that number off the top of my head.
But there are, I mean, it's more than just once in a while that you'll get a call and say,
absolutely.
Okay, we had a tree fall in our neighborhood, and my wife called KUB, come cut it up. Well, obviously that was not the right call to make to start with, because I imagine there's a perception of that. As soon as the tree falls, we need to go out there and see that. I just wondered of, the $700,000 or whatever, that we did the grinding and we did the removal of the wood, are we providing that much benefit to individual customers throughout the system when we take those trees down for them that are dying or dead or whatever? That it benefits us, but it also benefits them, because it's expensive if you go out and hire someone. All of us, I imagine, it's not a cheap thing to do.
Yes. In those cases where the tree needs to come down regardless of proximity to KUB lines, if we feel some degree of hazard associated with our lines, then clearly we will assist and will remove that tree. And in those cases, the customer is avoiding significant cost of hiring a private contractor to have it removed.
Thank you.
Mr. Silverstein.
Thank you very much. Since the last KUB board meeting, I've had the opportunity to carefully review and consider the KUB response to tree trim policy review panel recommendations dated October 21st, 2010. While it is a positive development that many of the panel's recommendations will apparently be adopted, I have many important concerns. Number one, changes to KUB policy should be implemented as soon as possible, and in cases of pruning practices, they should be implemented immediately. It has been claimed by KUB management that some pruning policies cannot be changed until new contracts take effect in June. That is simply not correct. Any contract can be modified at any time as long as the parties agree to do so. I am sure that the contractors will be happy to cut fewer trees or branches for the same amount of money previously agreed to. Ground-to-sky pruning should stop immediately in all instances, not in 6 to 12 months. Number two, KUB's management has refused to recommend a change in the policy regarding small diameter trees. It is not acceptable for KUB to continue its policy of mandatory removal and frequently without notice or owner consent of trees 6-inch diameter or less and other vegetation not directly impacting electrical infrastructure. This policy has resulted in the removal of hundreds of thousands of trees per year in violation of private property owners' legal rights, since such removal is not consistent with the legal requirements of being reasonable and necessary. KUB does not own these trees, even if it has an easement. Number three, it is unfair to property owners for KUB to refuse to remove wood from trees that KUB cuts down or to refuse to grind the stumps. This creates an unfair financial burden on people who cannot afford the expense. KUB is responsible for leaving property clear of debris, regardless of cost, and is legally obligated not to damage property it does not own. KUB should not claim it cannot afford to make these changes when it has increased its vegetation management budget by over 50% in the past few years to cut down more trees. Number four, regarding several of the panel recommendations, KUB's response is that, quote, it is appropriate to benchmark best practices among other utilities, end quote, before making a change in policy. KUB should just do the right thing regardless of whatever other utilities may or may not be doing. I must take exception to a few of the statements in the foreword to KUB's response, which states, first, quote, no vegetation management program can be designed that completely eliminates impact